so there's all this noise out there on social media. What this strategy, that strategy, do this, do that, don't avoid this, don't, whatever.
You get the roaring kitties out there.
There's
kitten.
There is an infinite number of financial takes, tax ideas, all kind. I mean, it's to the point the IRS put a publication out saying don't take tax advice on TikTok.
Yeah, are you familiar with roaring kitten?
And
have you heard of roaring kitten?
Hey,
oh my gosh, we should talk about roaring kitten.
Brandon Ducharme is an investment advisor representative of and offers investment advisory services through SCF Investment Advisors Incorporated, an SEC-registered investment advisor, 10150 Meanly Drive, first floor, San Diego, California, 92131, 800-955-2517, www.scfsecurities.com. SCF Investment Advisors Incorporated and Ducharme Wealth Management are separate entities. The information in this podcast is current at the time of recording. It is based upon sources and data believed to be accurate and reliable. The information, opinions, and forward-looking statements expressed herein are subject to change without notice. Moreover, all comments and opinions voiced herein are for informational and entertainment purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations and should not be interpreted as such. Further, the opinions expressed are Brandon Ducharme's and his guests and do not reflect the views and opinions of SCF Investment Advisors or any of its affiliates. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal. No strategy assures success or protects against loss. To determine what is appropriate for you, consult your financial professional. This information is not intended to be a substitute for specific individualized tax or legal advice. Ducharme Wealth Management and SCF Investment Advisors do not provide legal or tax advice. These services are provided by separate entities. The guest speakers featured in this podcast are not affiliated with SCF Investment Advisors, nor are they affiliated with Ducharme Wealth Management unless otherwise indicated.
Hey guys, thanks for listening. I'm here doing one take intro today with my good friend, multiple take, Rob McFarland. He's in here with us today, and we have a super special episode that we're doing. We're here with my dad, Rob Ducharme. He's the founder of Ducharme Wealth Management and our firm, and is obviously been my mentor. And Rob's here today to help just have this conversation from an outside perspective and help facilitate the conversation. So I hope you guys like the questions Rob has to ask, and I hope you guys have like the answers that the other Rob has to answer Rob's questions. So that being said, I hope you enjoy the episode.
What's your best memory of your dad?
I mean, there's a lot. I was the only, they didn't think they were going to have kids. So they bought me the dog when I was a little kid, and they treated me well. He bought me the tractor. I wanted to do some farming on the farmland, so he bought some farm equipment. That's what kind of started the sweet corn project. So you guys didn't farm before that? No, garden, but not farm. Yeah. So that's when we. I mean, there's a couple of years that we planted corn, sweet corn. We had done a number of years, but there was hay some years. And I mean, we started with all 30 acres, but then just scaled back to the corn, and we rented the rest of the land then to a farmer. But there was one time I remember I was backing the tractor up to hook up an implement. I think of this sometimes, and he got his hand pinched.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And, the clutch wasn't very precise, and I was doing the best I could, but he did get his finger pinched or whatever, and it must have hurt like a dickens. And I think that if I pinched myself or something, it's like, my dad didn't freak out or anything, but you can see like it wasn't a good thing, Yeah. And another time we were driving on a tractor. I remember this after I got back from a church service mission, and we were just talking about life and stuff. And he gave me some his words of wisdom. But I remember we were driving down the road on a tractor, and he's coaching me on things. And so there was a lot of cool things that happened with that around the farm, the tractor, and just that experience.
Where was this?
It's in Wisconsin.
Like any
with the west side of Milwaukee.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then when did your family get there? Like going back in time, how did he end up there? Is it always been Wisconsin?
He bought a farm there in the late 50s. They rented it for a few years and then they moved to it, the farm. He just saw a vision in real estate. He had been, that was an interest of his. He started a business in real estate. And that's started with this farm. Just you buy a whole farm for a few bucks back then. And it's probably been a bigger blessing than a good financial investment, just with the family. And now we've got the next generation that have stepped into my parents' house.
So is that like brother? I guess you don't have any siblings, so.
I do. I've got 3 siblings.
Okay.
None of them live in Milwaukee. They live across the United States.
Oh, okay. That's cool.
So we're the only ones local. And then we've got 2 of our 3 kids local. Brandon lives here in Utah, of course, and our oldest Robbie lives in Virginia.
Yeah. So going back,
Tyler
your parents,
and Ellie live.
Your parents didn't think they could have kids, so you were the oldest.
I was the oldest, and then 3 more came along.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
4 total.
Nice. And then how'd you get into numbers? Like when did you realize, managing money and kind of what your role is now? When did you realize that was like your fit?
Well, when we had this farm and we sold the products, sweet corn, we would earn some money. And then my dad and mom showed us how to invest that. First, we started with savings accounts. And then money market accounts after that.
How old were you?
Progressively, I don't know, 8, 9.
Yeah.
When we first started this,
That's
10,
awesome.
kind of thing. And then by the time, I don't know, 12 to 14, he was then showing us that we bought stock with some of the proceeds. And that stock doubled in value within 2 or 3 year period of time. And I was able to buy a car at 16 with gains from the market. And so still had my principal. I bought a car with this. It killed me. I mean, the rest of my life is like, hey, let's have money work for us instead of we work for the money.
Yeah.
And so that was a really cool thing they taught us. Both my parents grew up in the Great Depression. So they had some very tough circumstances, especially on my dad's side. So that's, they wanted to make sure that we knew about money and being self-reliant, thrifty, working hard. I mean, there's just some of the stated. We found a little note card that my dad had generated when he was, I keep it with me right here. So he had 5 different assertions here on this note card. One was not to confuse wants and needs. Number 2, avoid spoiling our children. Number 3, live modestly and avoid debt. 4, be generous in helping others and sharing the gospel, which he meant the gospel of Jesus Christ. And then the 5th was always remember our goal on being self-reliant for ourselves and our families.
Can I see that?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's one of the things we found in his one of the books that he had as a bookmark. So we made sure all the kids, grandkids, and family members had a copy of that. That's in his own handwriting.
On the other side of that card is Grandpa's prayer.
Yeah,
and that's his sense of humor right there.
And it goes back to something you said. He says, I don't know what this one is here.
Yeah,
you definitely got to be able to read cursive.
Yeah,
that word. I just don't. Does it look like GOSS?
Gossip. So.
Oh yeah, I haven't gossiped.
Yeah. Dear God, so far today I've done all right. I haven't gossiped. Haven't lost my anger. Haven't been greedy, grumpy, nasty, selfish, or overly indulgent. But in a few moments, Lord, I'm going to get out of bed. And from here on, I'm probably going to need a little bit more help.
That's pretty funny. And it goes back to what you said. You pinch his finger in there and he didn't lose his temper. Yeah. So was he pretty even keeled?
Usually. Usually if you could get him worked up if it was something he really, felt a lot about. Mm-hmm. He had some passion there.
Yeah. What gets you worked up? Do you get the same way? Where there's some things you're passionate about, fires you up?
Yeah, for sure.
What fires you up?
People not getting treated right with their finances would be one.
Yeah?
Yeah. But, I've tried to build a life off of integrity and trust and transparency. And, a lot of those things in the business world are the opposite of that. Mm-hmm. So, those are things that can.
Especially in the money world, like in the just financial management, all that stuff. There's a lot of distrust in that. For me anyway.
Yeah. A lot of people have had bad experiences, and defenses are up, and it's hard for them to see that there's a vision that it could be done better or right, or I can get help of someone that I can trust. This is what we've built our business on, is, trying to have that type of trust and have it be self-promoted, because people enjoy the experience that they're having. The communication, the helping get organized, and then giving a fair and balanced conversation to decisions, empowering them to make the final decision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dad, when's the first time that let me frame this up. You had a good financial upbringing, right? Grandpa was so intentional about teaching you how money works, not just the concept of buying stock, but making sure that you earned money and knew the value of earning it. But then how do you actually go? And back then you didn't have a Robinhood. You could just download on your smartphone and, pick a ETF to buy. You had to go to a broker somehow, or, you know what I mean? I'm like, in my head, I'm envisioning you like faxing a trade order in or something, how to dial up, or, this is like before internet, this is, early 80s, late 70s. So it was just logistically different than back then, but Grandpa was so intentional about teaching you about money, investing, value. And, when was the first time that you really had an opportunity to see outside of what your upbringing was, of sound financial education, what other people have, and where you just, the first time where you went, wow, that's kind of bad. That is really suboptimal, or you're just, where was that moment of epiphany for you where you went, I didn't know people didn't know this?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would think that as I got older and probably got out of the house, whether that was college or doing church service, and you start to get around people that are using money, or they have belief systems, or you go shopping at a store with somebody. My mom was always thrifty with, buying clothes, groceries, whatever it is. There was a certain way you accounted for all the money. It was a limited commodity, the way they used it. And so I think that's when it started. And then, I went to college and I was deciding what I should major in. I felt I wanted to own or run a business. I wanted more information about businesses and education on businesses. So decided, and my dad was helpful with this too. I really, instead of getting a business degree, got more of a technical degree in accounting. And I had started taking accounting classes when I was in high school, and I enjoyed them. And so by learning how the business financials run, I felt like, somebody couldn't pull the wool over your eyes. You understand how they're being made. So with that in mind, I graduated and got a job in public accounting, in audit and tax with a large accounting firm. Worked there for a couple of years and started to do some taxes. I can't remember if it was right then or if it was after I left public accounting to become a chief financial officer at a manufacturing company. But doing taxes was an interesting validation of this idea that people weren't getting taken care of the right way with their finances, because they'd have these financial questions relating to their taxes. And we talk maybe about what a best practice might be. And then the next, when I see them on the street or the next year with their tax return, I'd follow up and say, how'd that go? And they would share with me what I went to the bank and they told me to do this. I went to an insurance person and they told me to do this. It's like, well, that's not what we talked about. But they said, well, that was that. We don't have that. This is what you should do. And so it seemed to me like it was a product approach that was self-serving, and it really wasn't in their best interest. And I started to have these experiences. And then with, people at church, friends, as time to develop. And then my dad, he was pretty well known for his financial savvy in circles. And so people would ask him, or they'd start to ask me, hey, your dad said this, what do you think? Or, it developed like that over time. And, the more I saw, and then certainly having our own money and starting to experience a mortgage, for a first time, whatever those experiences were, buying a house, you start to have your own experiences as well, buying those insurances. How do I invest? What do I do? So yeah, it was easy to, get things going. One thing that we didn't really do a good job on, I think, personally, was until we got into the financial business as advisors, and consulting with people, is we really had to improve our own estate plan. We didn't have the right paperwork in place. It was something we had talked about, but it deferred. So you can get a lot of the steps right.
You're talking about for you personally?
Yeah. I mean, you can have a lot of steps right. And even someone that's really well-versed and knowledgeable in it, you can still have a weak spot in the plan. It's always good to have a second set of eyes on it, or have some motivation or organization, to get to a plan that's going to work well for either yourself personally, your family, your business, whatever it is. Have a plan and work it.
So you started it with tax, and then you went into a CFO role for a manufacturing company. Am I tracking that right?
Yeah. Started as a controller and worked in the CFO position. Ultimately, helped run that company through operations, and so it was about a 10-year run. And then I was also helping the owner with his personal finances and the real estate, and had identified that he had enough to retire. He was in his mid 50s. And so we helped him come up with a plan to sell the business. Ultimately, these were his decisions, but helped him. And then he was very fair man, loved working for him. He was a great guy. And, he passed away quite a long time ago, early in his retirement. But anyways, I stayed on and helped sell the business, through the due diligence, and told the new owners I'd be moving on after that point. I had looked at buying it with a few other partners, some employees that were also there, but we couldn't get it to work out. So
what kind of manufacturing? What were they?
It was injection molding.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and assembly, the associated tooling.
Okay, cool.
We grew the company substantially over the 12 years I was there. Mm-hmm. But you just have, again, more of these financial experiences. We bought the benefits for the 12 years I was there, was the trustee for the retirement plan. Had a lot of people sitting in front of my desk asking me financial questions.
Yeah.
And that, again, another data point of how people are being treated, and do they understand it? Are they financially literate? You can just see the market opportunity to do things for people the right way. The problem is that a lot of this really quality financial advice, especially on the fiduciary side, is kind of reserved for the affluent people, because there's not everybody is licensed with a fiduciary license. Mm-hmm. And so most of middle America gets left behind when it comes to, best in class type of planning or services, and they get more of a products approach.
The interesting thing is having your experience walking through kind of the journey you went in with the financial tools. Something that jumps out to me is you were equipped to be able to, you kind of took off these chunks of understanding within the financial world and looking at it from a lot of different humans' perspectives before you ever took on saying, here, let me help you with the full financial picture. At first you were like, well, let me help you with just this one step, right? Taxes. And then you get into that role as a CFO, and now you're understanding it from a business owner perspective, and then the employee perspective, because you're like, let me help. Now I'm going to help all these employees with, their retirement strategy. So it's interesting how you walked into that management position. The thought that jumps into my head is that you know, that kind of a talent is probably pretty rare these days. Most financial advisors are they're good at like one thing, right? There's like one part of the financial management world that they might be good at, but not with your amount of experience. Is that kind of fair to say?
Well, I think that is fair to say. It's
especially
a lot of
nowadays.
people, if you come out of college and you jump right into financial planning or whatever, what additional background? I'm not saying that person can't be great at what they're doing, but you know, there is it's a unique resume where, you know, you have experience in public accounting, private business, running businesses, being an employee, being the employer. You know, having been in business now, you know, we've got a business that has employees and advisors as contractors. You know, it's a business. So it is a value. It's like a tradesperson or a doctor, I suppose. The biggest obstacle is trying to offload or share some of that information or knowledge and put that into best practices in the system. So that's certainly an opportunity for us. And we find that, you know, it is helpful to people. I mean, people just want to be taken care of, and they'd be able to trust someone. So I think whether whatever your education or whoever you've worked for, if you've got that and someone can get to know you and they like you, and then they determine they can trust you, you know, whether that's starting as a frame of reference from an introduction or just sitting with someone for a half hour and getting a pulse for it, I think that's a good process to start. And then, you know, what type of system does a person have? Are you independent? Are you selling a proprietary product for a particular company? I mean, to me, value is where there is something that's more independent. There's multiple tools in the toolbox. A hammer isn't the only tool that's going to work. Let's find the right tool for the right job. And if you need a little hammer, that's all you need. Great. If you need a big hammer or a screwdriver, whatever it is, it's the full Snap-on toolbox. You know, for our friends at Snap-on.
Yeah. Shout out to Snap-on.
Yeah. Shout out to Tim and his company. But that's what it should look like to people when they're sitting down with somebody, and what it should feel like. And not that you're sitting talking about how to fill out an application in the first half hour. That's not a consultation. That is not planning. That's not organization. That's collecting information to put an application together.
Well, I think actually sometimes when I've sat with people, as I've started, you know, as kind of the second generation here in the business, I've noticed that there's people that almost expect that, to the point that when you don't have a product that you're trying to drive at, you know, you're not trying to place something, you're just trying to figure out what their goals are so that you can get the right tools out of the toolbox. It almost becomes uncomfortable for them, and it forces them to think, right? Like, what do I really actually want out of life or my planning, or what is important to me, or what does matter? And it's not that I'm trying to complicate the process, but if you're a super high risk person, the last thing that's, you know, good for me to do is tell you about how great some bond fund is, or, you know, or if you, I mean, I've talked to people that came in thinking they need life insurance, and no one talked to them about funding their retirement adequately and the liquidity that could provide. But the biggest miss was disability. I mean, they didn't have anyone depending on their income, but they were depending on their income. So it was like a disability policy maybe made more sense in that case. There's just all these things where, as consultants and you know, advisors that are independent, we don't have quotas, and we don't have, you know, certain things we need to get done. There's no underlying objectives other than just help the client. It can almost be overwhelming for them because they want it to be packaged in a simple, you know, buy this, you know, set of just, you know, mutual funds and a life insurance policy, and boom, you have a financial plan. And that's not, I mean, we know that's not good planning, but the consumer almost wants it to be that. They want it to be that easy, and it's just, it's not.
Do you think the reason why there wasn't, or there hasn't historically been access to whole picture financial advising to that middle America that you were kind of talking about, Do you think the part of the reason is because at the upper echelons of financial management, there's a expertise that is required to be able to do it, and most people coming out of schools or coming out with degrees are incentivized by these individual solutions, which just kind of keeps people out of the business of creating their own, end-to-end financial advisory type of a business. Why do you think there's a limited access, I guess is what my question.
I love that observation, because if like the product of a mutual fund or insurance, do you really have to have any talent or skill or education in financial planning to do that? No,
it's just sales.
It's a sales position. And so you're selling something. And so the person that you're sitting across from the table maybe maybe they feel inadequate about their own financial situation. We've developed really a process to help people. We call it getting their financial house in order. So we just help them in a very easy, graphical way understand that, hey, their house, they've got cash flow coming from a paycheck, a business. They've got a roof on their house and sides on their house, and that's protecting the inside, the contents, their family. And then what comes out of the house is investments in either short, mid, or long-term goals or objectives. And there's accounts that fund those goals or objectives. And so when you can connect the dots for people that way, you kind of shift them from, hey, I've always bought products, but now I need a plan. And I think to Brandon's point, is a little bit intimidating. I mean, the first time I saw a net worth statement was probably when I was in an accounting class in like 9th or 10th grade. Mm-hmm. A net worth statement, just simply a listing of your what you have and what you owe people.
And I don't even think they have that in 9th to 10th grade anymore.
Probably not, but they should.
Yeah.
Because people should have some basic accounting. It should be part of our financial literacy. Maybe the first time somebody sees a listing of anything like what they have is when they go to apply for a mortgage and buy a house and fill out a Form 1003. Mm-hmm. So they've not seen this information, but this is what they get is they get a bunch of statements in the mail.
Yeah.
And they get overwhelmed by that. And so if you can pull this together into a sheet so they can see what they have and see now there's a baseline. And now we can take from that baseline and we can look next year and compare the two and say, like, has there been progress being made or are you going backwards? Sometimes it's both, but at least we know. And so I think helping get organized, take some of the anxiety out of it is step one. And when you help people do that in a non-threatening way, and they basically put statements together for us. We organize it, put it into a statement, and then show it to them and go over it with them for the first time. They start to get excited. It's like, wow, I didn't realize that I had 5 retirement programs at different employers. And if I put, $20,000 times 5 together, I really have $100,000. That seems like a lot more than I had saved up for retirement.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see that excitement in their face, and whether it's that analysis or what type of coverage they need for, in case something happens to a spouse or a loved one in the form of life insurance or disability insurance. I mean, a lot of people don't even know they need to insure their cash flow stream, or they should consider it anyways. What happens if that paycheck is suddenly missing from a family? What are you going to do? And so a lot of our job is to help people look forward into that point where they're at the crossroads and they have an issue. And what would it look like? What would it feel like? Hey, your spouse isn't here any longer. That was yesterday, and now you are picking up the pieces. Wasn't it really comfortable to have this net worth statement and a website with organization and know that you're covered? There's either insurance, there's investments, there's cash flow that's coming. You're not scrambling to just wonder what's in the checkbook.
Yeah.
This is where that peace of mind comes in. And I've been in this business long enough, over 20 years now, to have some claim checks that have been filed, and the appreciation of a remaining spouse or a spouse that is now facing a disability for themselves or a spouse. That there's a plan in place and they have some vision. On top of the emotional crisis, they don't have the financial crisis. And we still have to work through things, but it's that peace of mind. It's not having a surprise. It's not having to start a GoFundMe account. You are self-reliant. It was one of my dad's points, was to take responsibility for yourself and make sure other people don't have to do it for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for most people, it's overwhelming to make all these considerations on their own and know that they're walking down that path forward. So do you think, has something changed? Is there a reason why there's more access to this for, an individual that has an average job or an average, salary career where they didn't have access to, financial advisory? What's changed in the industry where it's accessible to them now where it hasn't been in the past? Is there something specifically?
There's probably some technology that would help people, come up with a retirement plan. But again, that's just some numbers on a piece of paper. It really, it's hard to bring alive without having a person in there and kind of coaching you knee to knee. Maybe some people like that. That's okay. But I think having someone to help guide you through it. I mean, as an example, if you meet with a couple, they come from different backgrounds, and sometimes the financial conversation is uncomfortable for them, or one of the two. And if they try to do it by themselves, they almost like need a referee, right? An arbitrator to help them understand each other and where to come from and to come to a master plan together. You guys probably are aware that divorce, a lot of the contributors to that is financial stress.
Yeah, I think it's like 40% of divorce comes because of money, right?
I think it's higher than that even.
It might be higher than that.
So do you think it's the technology for the individual, or do you think you as an advisor technology? Because, when I first met with Brandon, I was looking at some of the tools he had and had the ability to manage a larger quantity of clients with that personal touch, because you had some of these technology tools that really hadn't existed historically. He definitely didn't have when he first got into the business, right?
He'd ride a dinosaur down to the broker and submit his trade order for his first stock.
I know, faxing over a stock order, or
I think my dad, he took care of it, but it probably was like a phone call,
right? So do you think there's just thinking about what you guys have built so far with your company in particular, is that one of the key tools that you guys have?
Well, there's
technology. Yeah.
Technology is certainly huge. You got to remember that on the there's a lot of people that have jobs and they have benefits, a 401k, health insurance, maybe even some life insurance up to one time their, annual compensation. What's missing is that walking the bridge over to the personal plan. That's still a products approach when you're the employee at an employer participating in products. Who is going to really help you decide whether to do pre-tax or Roth? Who helps you decide, should I take it? I mean, it's free money basically to get to contribute up to the match. Why wouldn't you do that?
Right.
But, unless you pull free money out of your dollar bills out of your pocket and show people, sometimes they don't get it. And especially if they're at a company that has bilingual services, it's some people just don't understand the concept of money.
Yeah.
So you really have to educate and you've got to teach. And then you have to have a way for those that want to go across the bridge. Not everybody wants to, but if they want to go across the bridge and sit with the advisor and do the planning, that you have the means to do that. And unfortunately, most financial advisors that are really the good people in the business doing fiduciary roles, they're limited in their time. They've only got 24 hours a day. And so they don't have a business. They might be a personal producer with an assistant. And, their minimums go up. I mean, I've heard radio shows already. They say, show up at the end of the show. Show up if you have $500,000 or $1 million or whatever the number is. How many people is that in a simple plan or a 401k plan, in your first 10 years of employment?
Mm-hmm. Not very many.
So you're trying to figure out so much on your own at the starting point, and you're either doing it on the internet, you're doing it on YouTube nowadays, or you're sitting with someone that has a product approach, and so then maybe you don't have the best experience, and so then you try to do it some more yourself. And what are you leaving on the table? And really, what you're implementing, is it best in practice? Is it best in class? Or is it not? How do you even find that out? But I think the buzzword of fiduciary more people are starting to understand that, and there are only certain licenses in situations that represent fiduciary. As an example, if an advisor has a Series 66 or a Series 65 financial license, that's a fiduciary-based license. If someone is a certified financial planner, a CFP, or a CPA with a PFS credential, stands for Personal Financial Specialist. And there's a few others, and we highlight this on our website so we can educate people.
It's like speaking another language.
Yeah, and you can. But if you know some of those basics, even just what I just said, and you can go to like on our website. And most financial people in the industry have a link to the regulator's website, whether it's the SEC or FINRA. You can actually look up these licenses that people have, and see is this really fiduciary based, or is this more of a commission driven thing or fee based? I mean, you start to understand if someone has the legal responsibility to work in your best interest, or hopefully if they don't, they still have a code of ethics somehow. But
that's rolling the dice.
Buyer beware.
Well, that's really, it brings up an interesting point. Like, people always say, well, I want to go talk to a CFP, a certified financial planner, because they're fiduciaries. And that's what the public has started to kind of grab onto. And that is true, but only because somebody signs to the code of ethics of the CFP board, right? Not because they have a legal obligation to do it. So if they violate that fiduciary obligation to you that they've promised, they're only liable to this point that the CFP board says they can't be a certified planner anymore, right? Or
so they take their piece of paper.
Yeah, they take their credentials away.
Their credential.
They take, whereas a security, when you're licensed and you have a securities license or you're registered as an investment advisor representative, right? You have a legal fiduciary obligation.
Yeah, you get that taken away, and then
the SEC will hold you liable. Yeah, right. The regulators and the federal government will hold you liable to that standard. It's that they don't come and say, hey, you can't call yourself an advisor anymore. They say, hey, you're liable for damages. Right. It's a different type of accountability. And so, but people think that, again, the fiduciary part comes from being a certified financial planner. The truth is, most certified financial planners are investment advisor representatives. They're registered as, on that investment advisory side. I would say it's uncommon, not unheard of, but uncommon that there's a certified financial planner only doing, commissionable sales. It's more difficult to find. So things like being aware of certified financial planners, or, somebody's a CPA, PFS, like, my dad, that brings a lot of value to the conversation. But the problem, and I think this is what, my dad's getting at, is you only have so many hours of the day. So if you have that credential, if you're that highly, qualified professional, I mean, think about it in real estate terms, right? You work in real estate, Rob. So if you look at the best brokers that work in real estate across the country, they typically find themselves in high-end commercial real estate doing huge deals. And if somebody says, hey, could you help me buy my own first house? I'm a first-time home buyer. They're like, hey, I think you should buy a house somewhere, but you can't afford me, basically. Right. And that's the experience that most people have when they go to talk to an advisor. I mean, there's a great guy in town here in St. George with us. His minimum is now up to $10 million. You have $10 million to get fiduciary advice from him. He's a great guy, great planner. And, and he kind of knows that's the way that he wants to run his practice. And I respect that. And I think what my dad's trying to communicate is there's a different way to do it, that you can help people that are more in that mass affluent, demographic or high net worth, that they've been that engineer or that employee that's, they've put together assets. They've been trying to do the right things, but they need a little bit more. They need to start getting more advice to tie a whole plan together. And one of the things that I've always admired about my dad is that he hasn't gated off the business or his time to just those people still. He's always been willing to give his time, talents, and efforts to people that weren't there yet, and not come up with a program of how can we market to the people that are starting out. How can we, make a sale to them. Right. But just, hey, if you're starting out of us, you still deserve a fair chance at decent advice as much as anyone does.
Yeah.
So he's, not to say it's pro bono work, but Dad, you've done a lot of pro bono work over the years, probably just giving people some free advice, just trying to do the right thing by people. And that's always been an admirable trait of you. And I think I've tried to replicate that here in St. George. I mean, you're in the office enough Rob, with us that, you see there's all kinds of people that come through the office. A lot of people come through the office, and there's times that it's just, you sit with enough people and you see these mistakes that people make and the advice that's out there by people trying to sell products and, self-serve themselves, either knowingly or unknowingly. You want to help people.
But see, it's hard. Like what I've watched your struggles with, and what I can only imagine over the years, you, because of your journey, right? The network of individuals that you've worked with up until when you got into that advisory role position is, it's less about what you know and a lot about who you know. And when you look at certain demographics, you kind of pointed out, there's a tradesman, there's like a skilled individual that actually probably makes a ton of money, right? If we think of like engineers or contractors or, just real highly skilled tradesmen that actually work for a living, right? Somebody that like puts sweat, blood, tears.
Blue collar.
Yeah, but like it's hard to say blue collar because like blue collar tends to be like they don't make a whole lot of money, but like the local plumber is making a pretty dang good financial living.
Tradesman.
But they're focused on this one thing that doesn't have to do with dollars and cents and isn't necessarily a business crafter, right? He's out there to serve a specific purpose every day, and he makes a lot of money. And then a lot of times, a lot of those guys, are missed in that financial management world, but it's hard to access those types of people because there's a lot of regulations on who you can, what you can say and how you can say it and how you can market and how you can make yourself available to the broader public, which I think is really fascinating to me, right? It's like, I get why there's a lot of those restrictions, but I could see how difficult it is for you guys to access a broader market that is a win-win for both of those parties. Because if you're the minimum of a $10 million guy, he's got a really small window that he has to market to, right? And he's obviously earned that because he wouldn't get it if that was his minimum. But if the goal is to help as many people as possible and make an impactful have a meaningful job, right? Where you show up every day and you're going to make an impactful part of somebody's life. It's tough to do it. It's tough to get to those.
If you really think of it, the person with less zeros in their net worth need more help because it's more, there's not the excess resources.
Yeah. There's not you can't make as many mistakes.
You can't make mistakes. This is all they have. This is what they have to live off of. And so the help should almost be inverted. Middle America should get more help because it is. I love working with people in that regard, and I think my parents certainly, and I've learned over time, especially since they're gone now. I mean, what you inventory in life is relationships and experiences, and all the rest you're renting. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter really what's on that net worth statement because someday you're not going to need it and your kids are going to have to mop up whatever you left behind, and that's what you left behind everything.
Yeah.
That's the reality of life. We come into this life, we end this life. And the more we understand that plan, probably the better we can work with all the other pieces inside of that plan.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
One of the other things that I've observed when you're talking about a $10 million minimum, Brandon, is oftentimes when people have more zeros, I have found that they still need that diversified help. They still need the tax help. They need the insurance help. They need the investment help. And the way the industry is positioned, a lot of these investment advisors focus on assets and investment management, and they don't really focus on risk management. And
they built their house, but they forgot the insulation. They forgot a couple parts to it. They got a leaky roof, maybe. Some of those things.
Well, what good is the house? You buy a beautiful house and there's holes in the roof.
Yeah, exactly.
Or you're missing a system.
Yeah.
And so
we only have one HVA system and your house is 5,000 square feet.
I've picked up clients because they their accountant finally said, you've been making too much money for Roth contributions, and you have to undo this, and you're going to have this big tax penalty, as a result. And so they go back to their, investment guy and say, hey, why were you telling us to put money in a Roth? And he said, good place to put money. You should invest your money. And he said, yeah, but we made too much. We weren't qualified. And he said, well, I don't do tax advice. It's not, I don't do tax questions. It just seemed like a good idea. You should have asked your accountant. And they said, dude, you recommended it. Why didn't you ask us more questions? Why didn't you, do a little bit more? And so they were, really upset. And they just said, like, if you're not tying the whole thing together, how are you making sure that the investments are good? Mm-hmm. Investments have tax implications. Mm-hmm. So if you're not even tax conscious, not to say investment advisors should do tax advice, but just being aware of tax situations, right? And tax implications, and consulting with clients, and then working with their attorney and kind of quarterbacking the team, bringing the whole thing together. It makes a difference.
It's funny.
And people need it.
It's funny you bring that up, because like I'm looking at it from a real estate agent lens, and I was having a conversation. I had this agent telling me about how, when it comes to when they're selling a house, mm-hmm. they're like, well, omitting information to me is violating fiduciary, right? When you don't say something that you should say, or ask a question, even if you're not giving them an answer, but ask them a question to help guide and help them think in the right way. There's a lot of real estate agents out there that are just like, man, I'll just keep my mouth shut. If I just keep my mouth shut, then I'm not going to get in trouble. I didn't say anything wrong. And it seems to me like I can see how both on the tax and the financial advising side is a lack of communication, or a lack of just being able to raise considerations, where you're not telling the client to think a certain way, but you're saying, hey, this is a helpful thing to think about, or have you thought about this thing? Which, I could see how a lot of, financial managers would just omit stuff. Do you think that's kind of what you're saying is happening?
I think it goes back to the sales approach. And I think, Dad, I think you'd agree with me too. I mean, we've seen where there's people that have fiduciary licenses, but there's still a question about what's in someone's best interest, right?
Yeah.
Hey, if you don't ask the question, and so, now you don't know, what's your real obligation, or, to the client, you're because at the end of the day, our scope of work, and this is true for us as well as any other professional you ever work with in your life, their scope of work is it's always limited to the information you provide them. Mm-hmm. I can't read someone's mind. You have to tell me what's going on. Now a good advisor will ask good questions,
draw out,
and help facilitate those conversations. But if you hide something from the advisor, right, you purposely don't tell them something, then they can't also help you as best as they can, right? It's like not telling your doctor about some of your symptoms because you're scared of the diagnosis he'd give you.
Yeah. Doesn't everybody have ringing in their ears? Yeah. Right. It's like, well, yeah. And that's where I'll give the pass to a lot of people, at least, and this is coming from me, is like, sometimes you get into that conversation, you don't know what to say and what to hold. It might not even be a conscious thing, but going back to, I think that key piece is having an advisor that knows how to have a good question series to draw out some of these thoughts, to get people's, minds turning and thinking in a specific way, which, that is on everybody to learn more. But why I think I appreciate having this podcast, but like bigger pockets, there's lots of different, tools out there these days. Having YouTube and things like that is helpful. But when the rubber meets the road, you got to be able to sit down with somebody you actually trust and be like, okay, I heard this thing. Am I right to think this or not? Well,
in the investment world, you call that signal in the noise, right? So there's all this noise out there on social media. What, this strategy, that strategy, do this, do that, don't avoid this, don't, whatever.
You get the roaring kitties out there.
There's
kitten?
There is an infinite number of financial takes, tax ideas, all kind. I mean, it's to the point the IRS put a publication out saying, don't take tax advice on TikTok.
Yeah. Are you familiar with Roaring Kitten?
And
have you heard of Roaring Kitten?
Hey,
oh my gosh. We should talk about Roaring Kitten.
We can't. So we'll just leave it at
that. This is funny stuff.
Yes, I don't want to.
He's going to look it up later.
I don't
We're going to look it up later, Rob.
Yeah, we can talk about it offline. Not now.
I always get in trouble whenever I come on these things.
I guess the point of that is you gotta know that you don't know everything. So again, a facilitation of you're kind of aware of some of the issues. So you're an expert in your area, and then you're not an expert, but you're very aware of what's going on. Like as I'm a CPA, so I'm would be considered an expert when it comes to taxes or accounting. However, I don't deal with it every day because I'm really working as a PFS, right? A personal financial. I'm working in the financial planning arena. So I love working with other CPAs and we talk the same language. Like I can say like, I'm seeing this. What are you seeing on exact implementation this year or next year?
Right.
Is how the tax law is shifting. And so we love to partner with these other professionals. And another one, it would be, an estate planning attorney, someone that, if you've got children and you don't have, powers of attorneys, some idea as to how guardianship for your children, that you have a plan, whether you have one or not, you either have the state you live in, that plan, if something happens to you, or you have your own plan that you've crafted with an attorney and it's signed and executed properly.
Oh, yeah.
Most people don't understand that. And so you got to know that you got to get someone to an attorney so that they are licensed to do that. And they're going to take care of crossing those T's and dotting these I's, putting that plan in place and making it accessible to someone so that if they're like something as little as having a power of attorney in a glove box of your car, because guess what? You're going to be driving to a facility that somebody needs care or needs your help or needs your decision making, and now you're the power of attorney, and where's the paperwork? You can't be fumbling around for that at that moment. So let's say if you have a power of attorney for your parents, do you have their power of attorney in your vehicle? So when you're dashing somewhere, you have it.
You have it.
If you're the sibling that's going to be the one that's going to be local on site. If you're not in your second or third in line, they still might call you over the phone. Do you know where the paperwork is?
Yeah.
So just little things and how to forecast when somebody needs something. Is accessible? Is it going to work? Is it going to work the way you want it to? That's what professionals do. And, they're good in what they do and they get paid for what they do. And, it depends if somebody is comfortable going online and getting some piece of paperwork that's fill in the blank and think it's going to work. What if it doesn't work when you need it? Or you have someone that knows and does it all the time, works with it, and can give you and walk you through a situation to customize it for you and your family.
I've had those, people, there's other people in the industry, other planners or advisors that use these, big law firms that they get to sell the law firm's services basically to their clients. So the advisor will do some kind of intake, sell an estate package to the client, and the law firm, drafts it up, so they take the legal framework or whatever. And now the client's got it, this estate plan or whatever. And they say like, well, how come you don't do that? You could get, more revenue from each client and all stuff. And to me, the answer is simple, is because you don't know if an estate plan is going to work until you have to use it, right? Because it has to hold up. It has to hold legal water when that lawsuit happens, right? When it goes through, when the will goes through probate, when the power of attorneys are challenged, when it's too late to make a change to get it right, it's it. So I'm less concerned about picking up a couple extra bucks on a client relationship and more concerned about making sure that my clients get in front of a qualified, good attorney that specializes in estate planning, that asks the right questions, gets the right paperwork done.
Is it fair?
It's all buttoned up tight. Is
it fair to say that like your role, like if we're going to do a football analogy, that if I was going to start with somewhere, the quarterback, you guys fill the quarterback role and you're like, these are the guys you're going to need on the field. Like this is who we're going to throw the ball to. Is that a fair analogy? Is that you're going to quarterback it?
It's probably more like a general manager of the team.
Okay.
Because even the quarterback is a player, right?
Yeah.
So as an advisor, maybe you're going to play the quarterback role, but you're in some regards, but maybe it's more of like a general management. You're going to help people get those players, acquire those players, assemble a team. And again, I think, when my dad was investing in the early days, there was a Sears catalog. And
Yeah.
in the Sears catalog, there was products that said were labeled good. Some were labeled better and some were labeled best. Maybe they were jeans or shirts or whatever. And, I heard a talk from a really sharp guy that I respect. And it was entitled Good, Better, Best a few years ago. And I think having nothing is probably not good, even good, but having maybe something basic is, as if that's all you can do, at least that's good, right?
Yeah.
And then how do we improve that to better? And then how do we take that to best, where it's bulletproof, it's tight, it's going to work. And I was just say I'm grateful for the estate planning attorney that we worked with our family, because we had to use all those documents. My parents all passed away in the last 5 years, and everything it worked the way it was supposed to. It did take some time, but nothing near a time from what I've seen with people that call up and say there's been a tragedy and there's nothing,
Yeah.
And maybe those calls just come from a friend or in the community, and now they're reaching out because now they know they need help. And it's like, wow, had we done this 2, 3, 5 years ago, boy, this would be in a different position, but let's pick up the pieces where we're at. And when we do what we can, where we're standing, we lift what we can, help where we can. But that's the fact of the matter is, what you do today as young people like yourself sitting here across the table, young families, you don't realize they're in this age group, like roll that forward 30 years and what that looks like. And most people don't even understand like compounding money and what you save today in your 20s or 30s, you have to save a lot less later on because the money's just working for you instead of you working for the money and socking it all away later on in life. Do you know that the average person gets like sticker shock at age 47? This guy named Harry Dent came up with his baby boomer demographic. It's like they get this sticker shock. It's like, geez, I spent all my money, but now I'm close enough to retirement. I better get serious. But power of compounding from 47 to say like 67, you only got 20 years to go. What happened from 27 to 47 where you would have had 40 years to go?
That's the magic.
From 27 to 67. Yeah, you lost the magic.
Yeah.
And now you got to have a front end loader of cash just to pile in to try to get any type of retirement plan put together. And hope is not a plan.
Something that you said just to kind of start the conversation was when your dad introduced you to like understanding money and thinking, 27 to 47, but thinking of 7 to 27 and how not necessarily like, hey, you need to get your kids into like investing, but the idea of like your relationship with money is different than my relationship with money, specifically because of how I was taught by my parents, not in a negative way, not in a bad way, but it was just I think we could all agree, and I've heard this lots, is one of the most important things that somebody wants to have accomplished at the end of their life is to leave a legacy, right? I think almost across the board, that's always an answer, right? Is I want to leave a legacy.
I think the legacy itself looks different for a lot of people.
But is it? But you would say it's some kind of legacy. But the idea of leaving a legacy of, oh, you didn't set anything up, and now your legacy is everybody around you having to pick up the pieces, right? It's something people don't think about. It's like, do you want your legacy to be that what you left them with is a big mess? Or do you want it to be, oh, I taught them earlier on, gave them the tools, and where I'm sitting at is I want to be able to teach my kids because I learned it at this age, teach them earlier so that the real legacy is that they're empowered with the tools to be able to get there, not just to give them a big stack of money.
And isn't that compounding?
Exactly.
That's compounding of knowledge.
Right.
And,
Absolutely.
And it works the same way with knowledge as it does with money. And that's what was one of my dad's principles, was like, don't spoil the children, teach them self-reliance, teach them the right stuff. And for me, the power of compounding money first came alive when $1,500 became $3,000 in a matter of a couple years.
And you bought a Camaro.
Nailed it.
68 Camaro. So that is a cool object lesson in how money works and kind of get you hooked on like, wow, let's do this again, and so it works the opposite way if you use debt, because debt at, 20%, 10%, 30% a year you're in a hole you can't get out of. And so you never get to the compounding on the positive side because you're stuck in the hole. And there are ways to get out of debt faster than others. I remember a client that came in and they had this 10, 12 cards, and they said the only light they saw coming down the tunnel was the train that was going to run them over.
Oh, yeah.
I put together a schedule, a debt elimination schedule for them, showed them how to get out of debt in, it was like 2.5 or 3 years. And you should see how they, over the course of 2-3 meetings, how that picked them up. They saw hope. They saw that light now at the tunnel a different way.
Yeah.
They really, they got out of debt in some fashion. I would say they probably weren't even that successful at everything that I showed them how to do. One of the things they did was they bought some term insurance. And I got a call about, I don't know, it was 8-10 years later from a family member saying that one of the spouses had passed away. And had they not had this insurance, this term insurance, I helped them put together, and it wasn't the cheapest thing in the world because there was some underwriting issues. But it was the key, and they said it kept the surviving spouse from having a financial crisis. They were able to pay off the house. They didn't have to sell the house. They were going to able to move forward. It was just one of the first people I helped early on. It wasn't anyone that most people would even be considering, but it was a friend of a friend that needed some help, and I needed some repetitions.
Yeah.
And it's really something that I remember as a cool story where I really impacted someone. Again, you think of all the people maybe beyond this life that would come and thank you for spending and investing some of your time on their behalf. Those maybe will be a couple of people that'll show up and say, hey, I really appreciated what you did.
Yeah.
That's significant. It's not about the zero sum. It's about looking people in the eyes and making a difference. And hopefully over the years, that's legacy that is left behind as a legacy of best practices and treating people fairly. And these are all the things that my dad would say all the time, and why people respected and wanted to sit with him. He helped people get employment, even in retirement. He'd go to church on Wednesday nights, and he'd just sit there and help people do resumes and job interviews, and just to help them.
Yeah.
And just the people that approached me after he passed away and said what an impact they had made in their lives was really something. So if you can see that forward in your own life, now you're really talking about inventorying some assets that really make a difference.
Yeah, that's the stuff that you carry with you.
Absolutely.
I remember early on when I was first getting in the business and you were talking about stuff, and a story that you shared with me that I thought was really cool and gave purpose that I didn't know was the owner of that manufacturing company you worked for. And, you helped him. You had told me that one of the best things you felt you had done in your life was help him retire when he did at 55 by helping him see that he could do it, and as a side note that, that sold you out of your own job. Right. But that was in his best interest, and he ended up dying, was it 10 years later? And he had to go spend time with the grandkids for 10 years that he, instead of just building it bigger and bigger and always bigger and more and whatever, it's like, man, you helped him go enjoy life with the grandkids, time that if he would have waited until a more traditional time to retire, he would have never had it.
Yeah. And I love the fact that he really was big on always telling me, Rob, your family is your best investment. Rob, your family is your best investment. Rob, you're spending a lot of time here at the company, and we really appreciate that, but you make sure you go home and take care of your family now. And he had appreciated it because of the experiences he had in his family, and he loved his kids. And then those kids, then there started to be a next generation. And, it was unexpected that he passed away when he did. But it was interesting to go to his funeral as well. And there's the people from the company that were there and his family. And, you could just tell that he did right by a lot of people, and he certainly did right by our family. And that's why I felt, staying in till the end and helping him get to where his goals were was the right thing to do. And, it just happened to be the right timing to launch, into a career change where we were going to be helping people in a more personal way. As opposed to manufacturing a product, we were going to be taking care of a service where there was a shortfall and a need, and it's valuable, and it's probably not been the biggest, but we hope it's certainly done a great job helping the individual family, the individual business owner that cares about their employees, that wants to have something that makes sense for them. I mean, those are the people that we really resonate with.
Nice.
Yeah.
Looking up at the scoreboard, right? Because you're clocking it in late in the game. What is your next goal? What else do you got to do? What do you want? What do you see yourself doing in the next 10 years?
Yeah, it's just continuing. Again, try to pass on some of the things that I've learned to our family advisors. Make a difference in the community. Certainly take care of our family with our needs as we age and so forth. We hope our kids are generous to us as we were to our parents. My wife did a great job caring for her mom as well. It's like a financial ministry. It's a really cool. People say, when you're going to hang it up or whatever. I don't see myself hanging it up. Maybe sizing it differently or giving responsibility. I mean, a lot of the advisors now, if there's a new client to work with, we'll share it together. We'll team effort. I think that's really good for the client to have more than one advisor. We have a support team that takes care of a lot of the service issues. It's a team that we surround the client with. But it's just keep inventorying those life experiences so that, as Stephen Covey would say, when they do the eulogy, there's something positive to say, and hopefully somebody had some positive thoughts or memories or showed up to pay respects or whatever. It's in leaving that legacy behind, not necessarily in a financial way, but did you make a difference with mankind? Did you treat your neighbor the way that God intended to, and did you love God as well? I think that's where it boils all down. That's what the fourth quarter looks like, and hopefully we're not in the fourth quarter yet.
No, you're not. You're not that late. You're not that late in the game. I'm just giving you a little rub.
Maybe we're closing out the first half, though.
Yeah, closing out the first half. Nice. You're doing pretty well for the first half.
Might have even entered the second, but
might be in the third quarter.
We'll see.
What else should we talk about, man? We're right around an hour.
I don't think so. I mean, we go on for a long time. We could do hours on just the farm back home.
Yeah.
Which my dad didn't mention, but he built his house on the farm. And
he talked about the farm a little bit, but
he built
building the house.
My parents built the house on the farm. They still live there.
That's awesome.
They built one until a couple years ago. Till last year, they had only built and bought one house. It's on the family farm.
Nice.
My dad's lived on the same farm his whole life, basically in Wisconsin, and that's where I grew up. And there's 3 generations and now 4 generations of memories being made on that. And Grandpa started a really nice legacy as a self-made man, and we hope to continue to carry on that torch. But it's not just a torch of being a great investor or, building assets, but it was Grandpa's real legacy is helping people and, doing right by people, giving people a chance, and feeling good about what you're doing to help people on a regular basis.
Well, and
sure.
he was kind of the face of a lot of it, maybe a little bit more higher profile because he had a business, and a lot of people asked him more about the investments and stuff. But man, my mom, she was the glue to the whole thing. Her investment was in the family. It was the family.
Yeah.
Whether that was, cooking, baking, laundry, running kids around, whatever. She did a lot with the limited resources that they had, and the garden came into play. I mean, we had a huge garden. I mean, we hated getting out there, sometimes picking the peas and the beans and stuff, and the mosquitoes stinging you, and the hot sun, and you'd wait for the shade in the afternoon from the trees, and that's when the mosquitoes would come out and get you. But yeah, she really, she had a big heart for helping people, making meals, just, the people in your life that are like that. She was one of those type of people. And, man, her caregivers, it was just great to see how much love that they had for my mom in the last years of her life, just the way they interacted and talked, and they really took care of her and my dad, and I'll be ever grateful for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a whole nother element of, the plan and executing the plan and who's going to take care of you. A lot of people think about the beginning of retirement and the trips and all this, but what about when the body starts to give up, or the mind?
Yeah.
And who's going to take care of you? Where do you want that care? Luckily, we were able to keep my parents at home and bring the care to them, but not everybody has that blessing.
Yeah.
But certainly knowing what it's going to look like ahead of time and helping your kids understand what that looks like so that it doesn't push it down and they're having to make decisions they're unsure of. Those are all very positive parts of having a plan and working the plan.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, well, it's good to get to know you more.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for this beautiful studio. Our friends here. This is great.
What other questions? I'm out of questions at the moment.
Oh.
Do you want me to come up with a few more?
We should be able to consolidate this down to about 2 minutes worth of something.
We're good.
Or a minute.
I think we're gonna call it a wrap.
Well, I think it definitely sets up for extra chapters, right? It's like understanding where the business is at, where we're going, and things like that. Just the history of it.
Yeah, I think we're good.
Okay.
Thanks for spending the time.
Big Rob.
This is a new thing for me, so thank you. This has been interesting.
Cool, man. Okay. What else?
I definitely appreciate the trades, like the trades analogy.
Mm-hmm.
You respect the person that can work on your car, your motor, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, to sit here and do these podcasts, which I do watch your clips and some of the sessions and stuff you guys produce. I mean, it's really a skill set that you guys have that is admirable. You're helping communicate very important things to people, whether it's the city, the community, real estate, wealth management, whatever it is. There's so much opportunity for people to understand from quality sources, people of high integrity like yourselves. I really respect that.
Thanks, man.
I'm lucky to pull off any kind of video on my phone with my grandkids.
Yeah, we got good producers. Blueform Media out there. Big shout out.
It's gonna put a big burden on them to make this look good.
This is gonna be easy. This will be easy.
It's a piece of cake.
Piece of cake.
Catch y'all next time.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Big Rob. We'll see you around. Enjoy your summer, not in that blazing hot sun. Enjoy the Wisconsin summer. I'm guessing it's a little bit more digestible than Southern Utah.
We'll be hitting the Harley event in July. We'll look forward to seeing you there.
Nice. Okay. Sounds good, man.
All right.
The cost and availability of life insurance depends on factors such as age, health, and type and amount of insurance purchased. Before implementing a strategy involving life insurance, it would be prudent to make sure that you are insurable. Investing in real estate and securitized real estate may not be suitable for all investors and may involve special risks such as limited liquidity and demand for real property, changes in supply and demand for real property, change in law, tenant turnover or defaults, loss of investment, competition, casualty losses, use of leverage. Real estate values may fluctuate based on economic, environmental, and other factors. There is no assurance that the investment objectives of any real estate program will be attained.